Welcome to the MuseCast, where we squeeze every last drop of inspiration out of Sunday's sermon.
I didn't hear you say that. I'm sorry. I asked if you were ready, and then I didn't hear anything. Okay,
yes.
good. All right, good.
Okay. We Happy Muse Day.
Happy Muse Day.
Muse Day. Dan is in a good mood, right?
Yes.
He's in a good mood.
Yeah.
Why are you in such a good mood, Dan?
Well, I'm usually in a good mood anyway.
Yeah.
But in particular, the Timberwolves are dominating the NBA and making a mockery of their opponents. And
that's right.
Yeah,
they're the team
fun.
to beat. They're
they
the
really
team
are.
to beat. It's amazing.
They really are. Yeah, it is amazing. So
I will have you all know that out of love for our MuseCast peeps, our audience, our community, we really did strive to have all of the sports ball conversation yesterday so that this would not overtake our show today.
Yep.
But we just had to mention it. You know, Timberwolves are doing
Yep.
amazing, and Dan is happy.
Well, and I will.
Go ahead.
Oh, hey, let me just say to that point, the Timberwolves run in the playoffs is really amazing, and it's super fun. And after decades of living in Loserville, it feels really good. And however, even the Timberwolves, you know, if they were to go undefeated throughout the rest of the playoffs and win the whole thing, which is very possible, it's pretty meaningless compared to the things that we're talking about in the book of Revelation. So it's
true.
It's right down here. So
Yeah.
Revelation, our conversation here is much more important.
That's right. See, Dan is excited about the sports ball, but really that pales in comparison to his excitement about Revelation and Good Heavens and Greg's sermon. Upgrade your Umwelt.
That's right.
Before we get into your sermon that I am very excited for, because I honestly feel like, let me just say this about your sermon. I feel like you have a taller task ahead of you today, Dan, because we had to shorten our service on Sunday because we had our covenant partner meeting, which is amazing and wonderful and a good time. But because of that, and because of who we share our building with and another service that was coming in, we had to like crunch. And so we know that poor Greg had to like squeeze all the things in. And so you get the joy and pleasure of not only summarizing what he said, but kind of trying to round it out and bring the full depth of it all.
Yeah,
no pressure.
Yeah.
Before we get to that, I wanted to brag and show you something. I'm wondering if you can see it. Can you see something different on the shelf behind me? Maybe if I do like this.
Oh, hold on. Hold on.
Them?
Is it the Wizard of Oz people? All right, you got to talk again.
Yes, those are, look at those guys. So that was part of my Mother's Day gift from my kiddos. They got all of the main characters in the Wizard of Oz. Isn't that so cute?
That is really cool.
I love them.
And now, so there's Dorothy on the top.
Dorothy's on the top.
I see the lion. I see the witch. I see the Tin Man. And then is that the scarecrow with the black hat?
Yeah, the scarecrow is across from the lion.
Okay, and then who's the lady in pink? Oh,
Glinda,
that's
the Good Witch.
The Good Witch.
sister.
That's right. Yeah, I forget about her because
I know.
You know, she's not a very good witch because she's she shows up after everyone is in all these precarious situations and their life is in danger, and then she shows up at the end for the parade and the celebration. It's like, where were you when we were
nothing, Glinda?
Right. We were wandering down the yellow brick road all alone, scared, and you know what the heck? So,
where were you?
Yeah,
where were
exactly.
you? Forget about it. That's why she's just kind of tucked over there.
That's really cool. Have you ever done the Pink Floyd and Wizard of Oz thing?
Oh no, but now I am intrigued.
Man.
What is that?
Oh, it's an old stoner thing that people would do where where you start playing the Wizard of Oz after the third roar of the lion, you know, the what is that, 20th Century Fox, that lion that roars? After the third roar, you hit play on Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon.
Okay.
And what happens is like the music corresponds to the movie in all of these really eerie ways. And so, like, for instance, when the song Money plays, it's this cash register. That happens at the exact moment that the movie turns to color. And it
Oh
is a
my
lot of stuff like that. So
gosh. Okay,
yeah, it's pretty
well,
fun.
I may not be around this Sunday, folks, because I got a little homework assignment I
Yeah.
got to do.
Like I said, you need to have some time on your hands to do this. And so,
Oh my, that's so cool. All right. Yeah, I will have to check that out after I hear your summary on Upgrade
all
Your
right.
Umwelt.
All right.
Did you
Here
get a
we go.
t-shirt, Dan? I didn't get a t-shirt.
No, we, there's little hints, little revelations of where we
Mm-hmm.
rank,
Yep.
in the church.
That's
And
what I was thinking.
yeah,
We've never gotten a t-shirt made
no,
after one of our sermons.
no, that's right.
We didn't,
So,
yeah, Greg doesn't love us the way that
yeah.
he values and loves Emily, obviously.
Is there a share your nuggets t-shirt? No, nothing
Come
nothing
on.
like that.
Come on. We're doing the real work here and
That's
we get
right.
nothing. We get
That's
nothing.
right. All right, upgrade your Umwelt. Let me do a little disclaimer before I get into this. I like doing the summary, and we originally were doing the summary just so that we had like some common ground to discuss during the show. I hope that people are not using this summary as a replacement for watching the sermon, because the Spirit really moves in a sermon as it's presented through the speaker, and I believe that a sermon is a sacred act, and the summary only summarizes the content. Really, it can't get at what the Spirit is doing through Greg or Emily or Shawna or me, and so I would just encourage people to don't let the summary of the MuseCast be a substitute for watching the sermon, because I think that you will really be cutting yourself short. And so
let me just echo and amen that, Dan. I was actually going to say something too. So look at this brain melt happening now. But we love that people tune in, and we love that the summary is helpful. And on occasion, if you're busy, like, we get it, but don't let these be a regular substitute, because there is a fullness that we just can't cover. And Dan does amazing at these summaries, but they're succinct, and they're kind of like an upgraded Cliff Notes, kind of just like it's a summary. It's a sermon summary. It's not the full shebang. And so as much as possible, please listen to the full shebang.
That's right. That's right. All right. With that, upgrade your Umwelt, and really, it's kind of fun. One of the things I like about doing series, especially with a team teaching sort of situation, is that we each get to piggyback on each other's sermons. And Greg this week piggybacked on Emily's sermon from the week before, and he is exploring this idea of Umwelt, and this idea that each creature has this certain range of awareness, this bubble of perception, and that is their Umwelt, and that's how they experience reality. The fascinating thing that scientists have discovered as we've been studying creatures and bugs and animals is that every one of these creatures have different mechanisms for perceiving the world. And we assumed, being a little high on ourselves, that humanity was the standard. Like, humans were the standard of perception, because we can smell, and we can see, and we can hear, and we have, we think we're all that and a bucket of chicken, as my friend Shawna Boren would say. But as we've kind of studied these animals, we've realized that, wow, these creatures, they have capacity, they have the ability to perceive the world in some ways way better than humans. And so the example that Greg uses is just like the spectrum of light that is potential for us to perceive. Humans only experience like 0.003% of what's there to be experienced. And there are other creatures who can tap into some of those ranges that we can't. And like creatures that use echolocation, where they like a bat will navigate the world through these echoes, and so that's their Umwelt. And so part of the kind of the what's appealing about this is that being born into this world as humans, we have our own human Umwelt. But when we get revelation from God, when we look at the book of Revelation, it's sort of this sneak peek into this reality that is just outside of our Umwelt, that we are called to participate with, and that we are eventually called to be a part of. And so that's sort of what upgrading your Umwelt is all about. And so bringing that concept of Umwelt back to Revelation 4 is really fascinating, because you look at this throne room, and just how strange it is, and it is very different than what we experience here. And so Greg sort of starts to tap into that, and he talks about how, what would you do if you were to go into this place that was outside of your Umwelt? How would you record an experience of things that are outside your Umwelt? You wouldn't even know what to say. It was jasper and it was emerald, and you would just like start throwing things out to try to explain this wild place. And that's exactly the vibe that we get when you read Revelation. You're like, there's had creatures with eyes all over it. What does that even mean? But then you start to think of like Umwelts, and you think of this higher plane. You think of this reality where we suddenly see things that we didn't see before. Having eyes all over the body is a pretty good way of describing a creature that now has greater awareness. Eyes are the portal of our awareness, and so you can kind of start to see the power of some of that imagery, and some of the weirdness of it sort of diminishes, which I think is really helpful. Greg talked about the Northern Lights and how he has had that experience of just things that you don't see very often, and you can't really describe it in a way that gives it justice. You just have to experience it, and that's sort of what John is experiencing as he goes into the throne room. And then Greg gives, I think, a really helpful discussion on like what do you feel about a God where everybody's just worshiping him nonstop? And of course the snide assumption would be that what kind of God is this that requires his people to worship him and tell him how great he is all the time? But really, Greg kind of taps into this Northern Lights thing again. It's like the Northern Lights didn't command anyone to marvel at them. You just can't help but marvel at them. And that is also kind of what we see with God is you have these creatures, you have these people, they can't help but just be in awe of God's beauty and wonder. And really, that's sort of our call is, if we can't imagine people worshiping God all the time, maybe the problem with that is that our picture of God isn't worthy of that type of worship. And it's an opportunity for us to keep digging and keep exploring what is God like, and what is this reality that we find ourselves in. It was a shortened sermon, which is kind of nice in a way, because when Greg does these shorter sermons, he has the best structure for his sermons, because he has to get it done in a condensed time frame. So he's got the setup and then 3 takeaways. And as a person who does a summary, I appreciate that. And so he has these 3 tips or strategies for upgrading our Umwelt. And the first one is to ask the Spirit to open the eyes of our heart, because we're born into this world that's being oppressed by this enemy, and each of us have our own limitations and our cultural limitations, and we're nurtured in a soup of self-centeredness and hedonism and all sorts of stuff. And so we could really use some help from the Lord, from the Holy Spirit, to open the eyes of our heart. And he shares this prayer from Ephesians chapter 1, verses 17 to 19, where Paul is praying that God would open the eyes of the heart of the Ephesians. And then the second tip or strategy is to try to wake up to the awe of creation all around us, and to just see just the beauty and the majesty of the creatures, and the system of nature, and just how amazing all of that stuff is. The more you believe that this is all part of God's design and God's plan, the more, when you see a butterfly, it's not just a butterfly. It's a kiss from God. It's a masterpiece of a creator. It's a Van Gogh. It's a beautiful thing. It's more than just a butterfly, and I think that that's super important. And then number three is to keep our eyes fresh by being grateful, by living into gratitude for everything that is around us, because we get dull to the miracle of life. Our eyes get dull to the miraculous that we live in, that we move in, and so cultivating a spirit of gratitude is a way to keep our eyes fresh to whatever Umwelt upgrades God has in store for us. That is my summary. What did you think of Greg's sermon?
Thank you, Dan, for the summary. I really enjoyed Greg's sermon. I agree with you. When he has to tighten it up so much, you get all the bang for the buck.
Yep.
He's just really succinct, and the structure just flows really nicely. I was really, in particularly, touched, moved, paid attention to when toward the end when he was talking about the tips, and he was talking about that, and you just mentioned that too. Nothing is just like it's not just a butterfly. He talked about this experience that he had where he saw he's like, oh, it's just a butterfly, and then he sensed, like, wait a second, no, like, look closer, like, it's not just like, nothing is just And when I was chatting with, no, I think it was when we were chatting with Emily last week, she said she's had similar experiences as a result of reading Young's book that the three of you have read in book club. That she's just now more aware of some of the intricacies of the animal kingdom and insects and bugs and birds and all of the things, and just being fascinated by that, and that we could come out of ourselves enough to kind of marvel at something else is just, that's precious. And it makes me think of moments, and I hope we all have them. It makes me think of moments when there's a person in your life or something in your life that just brings a smile to your face just upon seeing it. It just, hopefully we all have that. And I feel like that is what we're talking about here. It's just having that joy and that awe and just the majesty of it all. And it really does go back to picture of God. And I know that's kind of like our flag post, like, thing that we talk about, but it's so vital and so important. And I think it's a great take on, if the very idea of being invited into this throne room, as John is trying to describe, and he doesn't even have words for it, right? Because eye has not seen, ear has not heard. Like, we just don't fully know and cannot comprehend all that God has in store for us when we enter into such a place. And if our first thought is, why would we want to do that 24/7? Like,
Right.
Not in a judgmental way. I just lovingly say, let's examine your feelings, your reaction, your picture of God, because I think once you are truly in his presence, it seems like the only response will just be such gratitude and awe, and it's just majestic and amazing and beautiful, and that you will want to worship and ascribe worth to him. So all that to say, I liked the sermon a lot. I thought it was a good follow-up to Emily's sermon. It's a good challenge for us to try to upgrade our Umwelt. And I like it when he gets practical, and I feel like he did that well at the end.
Yeah, definitely. You had said something in there, and don't remember exactly what it was, and I had this great thought, and then it disappeared on me. So
Oh,
that's
was it when I was talking
unfortunate.
about the nothing is justa or
Well, that's true too, and that's where, for me, like I keep coming back to I did the sermon called Walk on the Wild Side in 2019, where I talked about how, like, one of the ways that God reveals himself is through nature, um and having contact with creation uh gets us in contact and helps us know things about God. Whereas if we're surrounded by man-made things all the time,
mm-hmm,
the,
mm-hmm.
the best we could do is find out about people. And so I think there is tremendous value in experiencing nature. It's also interesting, and this is in the book, but like there are people who kind of who have disabilities who end up upgrading their Umwelt literally to
Mm-hmm.
compensate for a disability. And in the book, there's this guy who he lost sight when he was like 4 years old,
Mm.
and he actually travels through echolocation the same way that bats do. He started clicking, where he would just make click noises with his mouth, and then he could tell where the walls and stuff were by the echoes and the sounds coming back.
Wow.
Even to the point where he is able to ride a bicycle through his neighborhood by putting a card in his spoke, and he can hear the echo of the card in the spoke off of things, and so he knows where buildings and stuff are. And he's got like sound tactics for figuring out what's ahead. And I mean, he's not like, he's not doing a race or anything. He's not, but
Right.
he's still biking, and now
Yeah.
he's got a blind friend who bikes with him now. And it's amazing. And so that's just, of course, on this physical plane. But the idea is that what John in Revelation is doing is he's exposing us that there are these spiritual umwelts also. There are these, we live in this natural world, but there is this supernatural realm
Mm.
that we're eventually called into. So I think it's fascinating.
Yeah.
It really is.
Quick question for you. And you don't know what I'm going to say, so I apologize in advance. But I know because we are social media buds as well. And so you have a habit of going out and doing yoga, like at different parks and stuff. Do you do that because you're bored doing it in your house?
Mhm.
And maybe I'm presupposing something, is there something about being outdoors and just connecting with your body and nature? Like, does that help you? Do you
Yeah.
sense this majesty that we're talking about when you're out there doing yoga, or are you just trying to get the
Yeah.
cardiovascular going?
Well, a couple things about that. One, this is sort of my house, and my house is maybe like twice as big as this. But we have such a small house, and there's just like literally no room. Like I could maybe do like a downward dog, but I couldn't do like a snake pose or anything like that. There's literally no room to lay down because our place is just so small. So on a practical level, I go outside for that just so I could like have a full range of motion and stuff like that. But I do absolutely love being out in nature where because especially if you're out there doing yoga, because when you go for a hike, hikes are great, but you're like walking and all of the critters are skittering away as they hear you
Yeah.
approaching. When you're out there for a half hour doing yoga, it's very calm and peaceful, and you're not creating that same noise. And all of a sudden you'll see like a chipmunk go running by, or
Yeah.
birds will like return to their trees because they know that, all right, this guy's cool, he's all right, and I even saw one of my favorite findings was an American mink, and I didn't even know that those were in Minnesota. And so yeah,
Wow.
so I saw one of those at like, but I love that. And you have the breeze, and you have the trees, and just the I can't remember what the gases are that comes from these trees, but it really it fills my spirit, and so yeah, I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, I just think it can sound like an oversimplification, but when we say that God's presence is all around, we just have to have eyes to see it. A lot of
Mhm.
times, we're not even talking about seeing into another dimension. We're just like, have eyes to see, meaning we're not focused on all of the man-made things around us. We're
Mhm.
not focused on all of the stress and worries around us. We're not focused on all the busyness around us. We're actually like taking a pause and noticing God's creation. It can really, really do something
Mhm.
positive for your spirit and your soul when you
Yeah.
do that. Along those lines, I do have another question for you. And then we did have an emailed in question from our friend Special K that we are going
Special
to get
K.
to. And so as Greg was encouraging us to ask, the spirit to open the eyes of our heart and to try to wake up to the awe of creation and to keep our eyes fresh by leaning into gratitude, which is so important. Like, what would you say, what is the benefit? Like, if we are just so busy with our tasks and our jobs and responsibilities and our families, our friends, or whatever it is, all the things that fill our life, and then we encounter all the various things that happen in the world, which, it is what it is.
Yeah.
What would you say is the benefit to really trying to lean in and see beyond what we're physically seeing? Like, what good does it do for us to try to enter into this throne room and
Yeah.
see the majesty of the Lord?
Hmm. I love that question. I'm want to hear your answer to it as well. But for me, like I look at the world as my Umwelt can access it, and
Mm-hmm.
and I think of like death, and I think of the suffering in the world, and based on my Umwelt of the world, it seems like that's just the way the world is, and this is the way it's supposed to be,
Yeah.
because within that Umwelt, this is just how it is. There is no hope for the world within the human Umwelt, and because within the human Umwelt there is the struggle for survival, there is the competition for resources, there's the second law of thermodynamics, which says that everything is burning off. It's
Yeah.
turning from useful energy to useless energy. It's all headed toward heat death, where everything will just be still and lifeless. And so I look at that, I'm like, well, there's no possibility for hope here. And based on my Umwelt of the natural world, death is ultimate, suffering is inevitable, and that's you just have the best you could do is just accept it. If I can expand my Umwelt and go beyond what this physical Umwelt gives me, now suddenly there is access to hope. Now
Mm-hmm.
suddenly I see that my Umwelt is not the whole story. The second law of thermodynamics is a brutal beast, but it's a tiny kitten in the hands of God, in the hands of this other Umwelt. So the more I trust that other Umwelt, that realm outside of my Umwelt, I should say, the more I trust that is real, the more justified my hope is, even
Mm-hmm.
for this world where there's the
Mm-hmm.
competition for resources, there's the struggle for survival, there is the second law of thermodynamics, and
Mm-hmm.
so to me, that is the ultimate payoff for tapping into that. But that I would even say, even though that is the payoff, that's the reason, that's like a justification for thinking of these things. I I don't really think that that's what motivates me toward it. What really motivates me toward it is just that the uncanniness of existing, just the
Mm-hmm.
strangeness that I'm here, and and the beauty of nature, even through the ugliness. I still see
Mm-hmm.
this awesome beauty of it, and this affection. I have this
Mm-hmm.
affection for it, even though it can be very brutal and violent. I still have this affection there, and that is just really weird to me. And that pulls me into something more beautiful beyond it. And it's that beauty that motivates me to press into that realm outside of my Umwelt. The payoff is there's also hope there. There's treasure on the other side of that. But that would be my answer to it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that answer, Dan. And I feel like I'm similar in that, for me, it is about the hope, because should I just focus on what I know, what I can see, feel, touch, smell, some of that is lovely and wonderful, and I'm so thankful for it. But there's a lot that's not, that I have zero control over. And the cool thing for me is that when I am able to, like when we pray that prayer, Lord, open the eyes of our heart, help us to see things as you see, like give us a different lens to see things. It is really tapping into like the one who is all and everything and created all. And that one, like, intimately, passionately, joyously loves me and holds me. And that is just really powerful. And so it could feel a bit Pollyannish, like to be like, that, we're meant for something else and blah, like this isn't the real stuff, that's the real, but it's not, because that is true. Like this is temporal. Like this is not forever. As glorious as this is and as awful as this is, it is not forever. And forever will be beyond our wildest imaginations, beyond our wildest dreams. And that just is exciting to me, because you see glimpses of it here. You see glimpses through nature, through the people that you love, through the things that you get to experience, through, moments and encounters. You see glimpses of the beauty of God. And just to think that beyond there is a complete surrounding of that, that is exciting, because I know that this is not what he intended or purposed. And, but this isn't forever or where it ends. And that is a really hopeful, exciting thing for me to think about.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, well said. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Shall we go to special case question?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
I'm gonna read it so as to not muck it up. All right. Greg references Isaiah 6 and said that in Isaiah's vision, he saw and heard the same 4 living creatures that John describes in Revelation 4. What I'm seeing, special K, in those texts is that Isaiah was seeing and hearing the seraphs, God's attendants, as the ones calling out to one another, "Holy is the Lord." Isaiah's description does not appear to match what John describes. Isaiah saw seraphs, seraphim, that had 6 wings, and John saw 4 living creatures with different faces. Did Greg just get the reference wrong, or are the beings in Isaiah's vision synonymous with the beings in Revelation 4?
Well, first of all, let me just say that hats off to you, Special K, for looking up the verses. That's awesome. Good for you. I don't remember that detail of Greg referring to Isaiah. It's actually Ezekiel 1 that the beasts are that John is calling back to in that vision. I think the passage in Isaiah does refer to the angels singing "Holy, Holy, Holy" in Revelation 4, but the beasts refer to Ezekiel chapter 1, and I think like starting verse 6 or something like that. It's like the second paragraph of the first chapter of Ezekiel. So check that out. Maybe I'm wrong too, but check that out and get back to me. But I think Greg just misspoke there. I think he meant to say Ezekiel 1, which is easy to do because Isaiah, Ezekiel, they in my head, even I'm like, they start off soft with the vowels, and then there's some hardness in the middle, and there's just a lot of like similarity in those words from a phonetic perspective. So,
Absolutely. And just even from a sermon giving practical standpoint, we talk every week on here about how we all have to whittle down to get it to, 35 minutes to fit within the service. And Greg had to even do more whittling. And so in his hurriedness, he could have just misspoke, but good on you, Special K.
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing too is like, even then, sometimes we just like screw up and
just make a mistake. It's okay.
I mean, like, those of you who are covenant partners, we did a video kind of sharing our bloopers from the last year. And Greg started off the Book of Revelation series by emphasizing that it's revelation, not revelations. And he was very put out by people who say revelations. And then as our communications team showed the world, Greg and us, we all, except for you, Shawna, but everybody else, we keep saying revelations on accident. And so we all need mercy except for Shawna. So.
That's right. I will loudly and proudly wear that hat of the one who has not ever said it incorrectly. So
that's right. I'm impressed.
Yay me. Yay me. All right, Dan. Thank you for tackling Special K's question. And just really quickly, thank you to all the covenant partners. That was such a cool time to come together. We had folks in the room, quite a couple hundred folks in the room. We had more that were tuning in via Zoom, because we have literally folks from all across the country and around the world that are now officially connected to Woodland Hills. And it's just such a cool celebration. And our communications team knocked it out of the park with that recap video. It's good to look back at all the stuff and just be able to laugh at ourselves. And and the MuseCast made it on there a few times.
That's right.
Which I thought was so fun. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Good stuff. It just shows how much of a good time we have together with the MuseCast peeps, and just in general at Woodland. It's a great place to be a part of. So thank you all for doing that. Dan Kent.
Yes.
Do you know what time it is?
I'm guessing it's nugget time. Woo!
Nugget time. I just know someone's working on a T-shirt for us for nugget time.
Share your nuggets.
Let me say my nugget is a prayer
cool.
that fits nicely with what we've been talking about. So knowing that, you can either
I think we should end
or conclude. Okay.
I think we should end with the prayer. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Which means my nugget, especially in terms of waking up to the miracle of creation all around us. And I did reference this in A Walk on the Wild Side, but something that helps me is to look for people who are good at recognizing things in nature, and to learn from them how to recognize things in nature. And because we get lulled into just life, and we lose touch with the glorious things all around us. And one of the things that I have done for 20 some years is I've really been into poets, because I think good poets, there's a lot of poetry out there that is on the right track, but is not quite the same as some other poets who are further down the path, I'll say. In other words, you have to swim through a lot of poetry to find the real gems. But there are some poets who are just really, really good at seeing things in nature that most of us miss. And I have some great examples of that, but for something to share here, I really like haiku. And if you can find some good haiku writers, they're really good at just noticing things. And by seeing how they notice things, it helps us get into mindset of noticing things. And so this is a collection from Richard Wright. And Richard Wright was sort of a early civil rights guy, even before Dr. Martin Luther King. He wrote a book called Black Boy, and a couple other. He's got some just great short stories that talk about growing up Black in a Jim Crow sort of setting. He sort of ended his life in exile in France, where there are these people who were trying to kill him, and so he found this place in exile in France, and he spent the last couple years of his life writing haiku in this farm, basically, and there's I think he has like 1,500 haiku. This is called The Last Poems of an American Icon, and
Wow.
he just spent his days noticing things in nature all around him
Mm.
and putting them in haiku form. And a haiku is basically 3 lines. It's 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables, and there's other kind of like kind of tips and tactics for it, but these are just a couple of them that I think are interesting. So here's one. This is number 138. It says, "Upon the roof's edge, a cat in autumn moonlight contemplates the road." And so he just sees this cat up on the edge of the roof, and he projects that the cat is contemplating the road below. And it's not like a life-changing, profound thing, but it's this moment that Wright notices, and it's that noticing that he captures in this haiku, and I think that's really helpful. I like this one uh, because this one refers to something that we shared last week. But it goes like this: "How melancholy that these sweet magnolias cannot smell themselves." And we talked
Oh.
about the umwelt of these different creatures and how, like I talked about those cleaner shrimp who are just absolutely beautiful, and they don't even have the capacity to see their own beauty. And I think that's where we get to the vision of John, where all of the creatures have eyes all around them. They can see their own beauty. They can see things that maybe they couldn't before. And I'm going to just share one more here. And I like this one because it's sort of a little 3-act play, but it goes like this: "Holding too much rain, the tulip stoops and spills it, then straightens up again." And again, it's just like this. He just notices, okay, here's this tulip, and then it's raining, it's raining, it's raining, and then all the water pours out and it jumps back up again. And it's not a life-changing thing, but it's this moment of noticing that captures what it looks like to be in touch with what's around you, where you are using your Umwelt to see these really interesting things that most of us don't even pay attention to. And having mentors to model paying attention is very valuable. And that's why I recommend reading poetry and haiku. And that is my nugget.
I love that nugget, Dan. And I'm going to ask you, which we don't typically do, about your nugget. How did you find this guy? That it sounds fascinating. His
Yeah.
life, but then yes, his work, like
Yeah.
just is fascinating.
Well, it's really interesting that it was actually during our learnathon where I
Okay.
found out about, because I was looking for like people like right before the civil rights movement, and that was Richard Wright. He had this book called Black Boy. It was this best-selling book, and it was made into a movie, and I actually made a book review of this where I share some clips from that movie, and I'll share a link to that book review
Yeah.
in the show notes. But that's how, and then I found out he wrote haiku, and I'm always looking for haiku writers
Hmm.
to just because I like to write haiku, and it helps me kind of like expand my own abilities. And so
Yeah.
yeah, that's how I found it, is the Learnathon. So
Love it. Love it. The Learn-a-thon, folks.
yeah.
And then secondly, again, in reference to your nugget, I too have caught my cat Loki contemplating not road, but the birds from winds in our house. That is just such a perfect picture of that haiku you shared. I could see my cat doing that because I see her all the time contemplating the birds from the window. All right. Thank you for sharing that. And please, yes, link that in the show notes. That'd be wonderful. This is a prayer for us all, and this is how we will end our time together today. Light upon light. Since I do not know what this day will bring, I ask for indications of providence and guidance for my spiritual journey. Open the ear of my soul to hear the calm whisper of your spirit speaking directly to my heart and to believe again the ancient promises from above. Open the eyes of my heart so as to see with the certainty of faith in the light of your loving purpose. Amen.
Hmm. That's great. That's perfect for this sermon. Open the ears and the eyes of my heart. Wow.
There you go. That's how we do, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in and just for being you and being a part of this. We really enjoy it. The email address that you can continue to send in questions and or comments of the like. He got it, folks.
I nailed it.
MuseCast at whchurch.org. Perfect. Perfect. We will see you 4 p.m. Central live on the YouTube. Well, it's not live, but we'll be live in the chat. That's what I mean to say.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have a great week. Really, just see what you can do to expand your Umwelt, like to see what there is to see, because all that we know is not all that there is to know.
That's
And let's
right.
be curious. All right. Have a great
Yeah.
week, everyone.